Humanity, as it turns out, wasn't content to stay on one measly planet orbiting an unremarkable star. No, we had to go and spread ourselves across the galaxy like some kind of cosmic rash. By the 25th century, we had colonies on 37 planets in 22 star systems. Not bad for a species that spent most of its history fighting over which imaginary lines on a map belonged to whom. Epsilon Colony was our farthest outpost, a testament to human perseverance or stubbornness, depending on who you asked. 300,000 souls living in gleaming domes on a planet that almost, but not quite, resembled Earth. It was practically a paradise, if your definition of paradise included slightly higher gravity that made everyone look like they were perpetually carrying a heavy backpack. On what would later be called the Day, Epsilon Colony was going about its business. Farmers were farming hydroponics, miners were mining whatever shiny rocks they could find, and administrators were administrating with all the enthusiasm of people who chose bureaucracy as a career path. Little did they know that their mundane Tuesday was about to become extremely unmundane. At precisely 0843 colony time, without so much as a hello or a we find your continued existence offensive, a fleet of ships belonging to a previously unknown alien species dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly above Epsilon. The colony's defense systems, designed more to deflect rogue asteroids than actual attacks, did approximately nothing useful. Within 17 minutes, Epsilon Colony ceased to exist. Not a dramatic explosion, not a heroic last stand. Just gone. 300,000 lives snuffed out faster than a candle in a hurricane. When news reached Earth 2 days later, the response was predictable. Shock, horror, rage, demands for immediate retaliation. The United Earth government called an emergency session, and holoscreens around the planet showed grim-faced politicians making the sorts of promises politicians make when they have absolutely no idea what to do. That was when Admiral Thaddeus Montgomery, a man whose face looked like it had been carved from granite by someone who really hated granite, stood up in the middle of the session and said 8 words that would change the course of human history. I know exactly how to handle this situation. The room fell silent. Then, like a wave, every eye turned toward the ancient military man who hadn't spoken publicly in 15 years. And I guarantee, he continued with a thin smile that sent chills down spines across the solar system, they won't see it coming. Commander Jack Holloway was having a terrible day even before he got the call that would drag him into the strangest military operation of his career. His coffee maker had committed suicide that morning, his neighbor's pet iguana had somehow broken into his apartment again, and his latest attempt at dating had ended with his prospective partner claiming she was allergic to sarcasm. So when they said report to Cheyenne Mountain, I assumed it was for something boring like budget cuts or another sensitivity training workshop. Jack explained to the room full of people who definitely hadn't asked. But no, apparently we're here to avenge a colony. Color me surprised and professionally obligated to care. The chamber deep beneath the ancient military complex was filled with an unlikely collection of Earth's supposed finest. To Jack's right sat Dr. Eleanor Matthews, a physicist whose nickname Boon Boon came from her tendency to solve problems by suggesting explosions as a first resort. Her wild red hair seemed to defy gravity, much like many of her theories. I'm just saying, Eleanor was explaining to nobody in particular, that technically speaking, with the right application of energy, we could make their entire star system very sorry. On Jack's left was Major Darius Kwan, a strategic operations specialist whose perpetual frown suggested he was mentally calculating how many ways everyone in the room could die at any given moment. Behind them sat Lieutenant Meera Patel, the youngest person present and supposedly Earth's best pilot, who was currently making a paper airplane out of what appeared to be classified documents. At the head of the table stood Admiral Montgomery himself, flanked by a holographic display of a star system Jack didn't recognize. Ladies, gentlemen, and whatever Major Kwan identifies as today, the Admiral began, ignoring Kwan's deeper scowl. Welcome to Project Silence. Catchy name, Jack muttered. Very ominous, 10 out of 10 for branding. Commander Holloway, Montgomery said without looking at him. I selected you specifically for your tactical creativity and your complete lack of diplomatic skills. Please don't make me regret the former by displaying the latter." Jack mimed, zipping his lips while simultaneously rolling his eyes. "The aliens who destroyed Epsilon Colony call themselves the Kraxori Imperium," Montgomery continued, bringing up images of insectoid creatures that looked like someone had crossbred a praying mantis with a particularly angry lobster. "According to the limited data we've gathered, they consider themselves the rightful rulers of this arm of the galaxy and view our expansion as an encroachment on their territory." Did they perhaps mention this before vaporizing 300,000 civilians? Dr. Matthews asked, her voice dripping with barely contained rage. "They did not," Montgomery replied. "Which brings us to our response. The United Earth government has officially authorized a proportional reaction." The room fell silent as the holographic display shifted to show a complex diagram that Jack couldn't begin to understand. "We're going to make a star disappear," Montgomery said with all the emotion of someone announcing tomorrow's weather forecast. The silence stretched for 5 full seconds before Jack broke it. "I'm sorry, we're going to what now?" Dr. Eleanor Boone Matthews practically bounced to the front of the room, her enthusiasm for what was essentially stellar homicide unsettlingly apparent. "So, who here understands quantum state manipulation on a stellar scale?" She glanced around the room and nodded. "That's what I thought. Let me dumb it down for the military minds." Jack raised his hand. "Can you dumb it down even more than that? I failed astrophysics in school because I kept falling asleep." "Stars. Then," Eleanor said slowly, as if speaking to a particularly dense child, "are basically giant nuclear fusion reactors. What we're proposing is to alter the quantum state of the Kraxori home star's core particles, effectively placing them in a superposition that will result in the star appearing to simply wink out." Mira leaned forward. "Wait, you're saying we're going to kill their star? Isn't that like super genocide?" Eleanor's smile was disconcertingly bright. No, we're not killing it. We're just relocating its energy signature to a parallel dimensional state. The star will still exist, technically speaking. It just won't be visible or detectable in our universe, and it won't provide heat or light or sustain life, but it will definitely still exist. Sort of. Major Quan pinched the bridge of his nose. "So we're going to plunge their entire system into darkness and freezing cold. How is this not genocide?" Admiral Montgomery stepped back to the front. "The devices will be programmed with a 48-hour delay. We will contact the Kraxori leadership, inform them of what we've done, and give them time to evacuate their civilian population. This is primarily a demonstration of capability." "And what if they don't believe us?" Jack asked. "Then they'll learn a valuable lesson about taking human threats seriously," Montgomery replied coldly. "But I believe they will. Dr. Matthews' technology has been tested on a smaller scale." Eleanor nodded enthusiastically. "We made a brown dwarf disappear last year in the Oort cloud. Nobody noticed because, well, it was in the Oort cloud, and nobody cares about what happens out there. But it worked perfectly." Jack blinked slowly. "So let me get this straight. Our response to them wiping out one colony is to make their entire home star system uninhabitable. This feels like bringing a nuclear warhead to a knife fight." Technically, Eleanor corrected. "It's more like bringing a dimensional shift manipulator to a knife fight. Much cleaner. Hardly any radiation." The briefing continued with Eleanor explaining the technical aspects of the mission. They would need to position 5 quantum displacement devices at precise coordinates around the Kraxori star. Each device was about the size of a small car and needed to be placed and activated simultaneously. "And they won't detect these devices?" Darius asked skeptically. "The devices utilize the same technology that keeps them from being detectable," Eleanor explained. "They're essentially half-existing in another dimension already. To Kraxori sensors, they'll appear as nothing more than space debris, if they register at all." As the briefing wrapped up, a communications officer entered and handed Montgomery a datapad. The Admiral's expression, which had started at grim and had nowhere darker to go, somehow managed to find a new shade of foreboding. "It seems," he said quietly, "that the Kraxori have just made contact. They're demanding Earth's immediate surrender and threatening to destroy Mars colony next if we don't comply within 72 hours. Jack looked around the room, at the faces of his new teammates, and sighed. Well, that certainly simplifies the moral calculus, doesn't it? The ship they gave them for the mission was a marvel of engineering, which was a polite way of saying it looked like it had been designed by committee and then built by the lowest bidder. The EFS Inconspicuous, yes, that was its actual name, resembled a lumpy asteroid more than a spacecraft, so its surface deliberately irregular and covered with sensor-absorbing materials. "Home sweet home," Jack muttered as he strapped himself into the command chair. "I've stayed in nicer prison cells. You've been in prison?" Mira asked from the pilot's seat, her fingers already dancing across the controls with the easy confidence of someone who could fly a brick if it had even minimal thrusters. "It was a diplomatic misunderstanding," Jack replied. "Apparently on Proxima B, telling someone their hat looks stupid is considered a marriage proposal." Darius, strapping himself into the tactical station, actually cracked a smile. "Is that why they call you the widower in certain circles?" "I'd prefer not to discuss my extensive hat-based polygamy. Thank you very much." The Inconspicuous slipped out of Earth orbit with all the fanfare of a tax auditor, leaving work early. Their mission wasn't officially sanctioned by the United Earth government if asked. Montgomery would undoubtedly claim they were all rogue agents who had stolen experimental technology. Plausible deniability was the name of the game. Eleanor sat at the science station, surrounded by holographic displays showing incomprehensible equations. "We're going to need to make 17 jumps to reach the Kraxori system," she announced. "I've plotted a course that should keep us away from their patrol routes." 17 jumps? Jack whistled. "My stomach barely tolerates one." "Don't worry," Eleanor said with a grin that did nothing to reassure him. "I've developed anti-nausea patches that are only 20% likely to cause hallucinations." The journey to the Kraxori system took 11 days, during which Jack discovered that Eleanor's patches did indeed cause hallucinations specifically, the conviction that one's skin was slowly turning into cheese. Despite this, the crew managed to maintain some semblance of professionalism, with only one minor incident involving Mira convinced that her left hand had become sentient and was plotting against her. As they approached the outer boundary of the Kraxori system, Darius called them to the bridge for a final briefing. "We've mapped their patrol patterns," he said, displaying a complex three-dimensional grid. "They're methodical. I'll give them that, every 6 hours, like clockwork." "Perfect," Eleanor said. "That gives us precise windows to place the devices." Jack studied the display. "What about their home planet? Any sign of evacuation?" Darius shook his head. "Nothing. Either they don't believe Earth's warning, or they're calling our bluff." 3 days earlier, Earth had sent a message to the Kraxori leadership, explaining in precise detail what was about to happen to their star. The response had been dismissive. The Kraxori ambassador had actually laughed, a sound like knives scraping against metal, and said that primitive apes couldn't possibly possess such technology. "Their funeral," Mira muttered, then winced. "Sorry, bad choice of words." Placing the devices proved more challenging than anticipated. The first 3 went smoothly, with Eleanor and Darius taking a shuttle to position them at the calculated coordinates. The 4th nearly ended in disaster when a Kraxori patrol ship altered course unexpectedly. "They're going to spot us," Darius hissed over the con. "We need to abort." "But no time," Eleanor replied. "Jack, I need a distraction." Jack, monitoring from the Inconspicuous, made a split-second decision that he would later describe in his report as tactically sound and in his personal log as absolutely batshit insane. "Mira, plot a course directly between the patrol ship and our shuttle. Full speed, maximum debris dispersal." "You want me to ram them?" "I want you to get close enough that they think we might ram them, then scatter enough sensor-confusing junk that our shuttle can slip away." The maneuver worked barely. The Inconspicuous screamed past the Kraxori patrol, ejecting a cloud of specially designed chaff that played havoc with their sensors. In the confusion, Eleanor and Darius placed the fourth device and made it back to the ship with only seconds to spare. The fifth device proved even more problematic. Its designated position was perilously close to the Kraxori homeworld, a planet that looked disturbingly beautiful from orbit, all swirling blues and greens not unlike Earth. "There are billions of them down there," Mira said quietly as they prepared for the final placement. "Civilians. Children." Jack stared at the view screen. The weight of what they were about to do suddenly very real. They had civilians on Epsilon too, but we're giving them a chance we never got. "We're still talking about an entire star system," Darius pointed out. "Even with warning, they can't possibly evacuate everyone." Eleanor looked up from her calculations. "Technically speaking, we could abort. The devices haven't been activated yet." A heavy silence fell over the bridge. 4 pairs of eyes turned to Jack, who suddenly felt the full weight of command pressing down on him like the gravity of a dying star. "Send one more warning," he said finally, direct to their leadership. "Tell them we're not bluffing, and they have 48 hours from the moment we activate these devices. Then place the final unit." The message was sent. The device was placed, and as the inconspicuous slipped away from the Kraxori system, Jack gave the command that would change the galaxy forever. "Activate the sequence." The inconspicuous took up position at the edge of the Kraxori system, just beyond the range of their patrol ships but close enough to observe what was about to happen. Jack found himself unable to sleep, instead spending hours in the observation deck, staring at the distant pinprick of light that was the Kraxori home star. "Having second thoughts?" Eleanor asked, appearing beside him with 2 cups of a liquid that smelled suspiciously like engine coolant, but was apparently her attempt at coffee. "No," Jack said. Accepting the cup and taking a cautious sip, he immediately regretted it. "Well, maybe about this coffee." Eleanor smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "About the mission, I mean." Jack sighed. "I'm having every thought possible about this mission. First, second, third, all the way to millionth. But they didn't give Epsilon Colony a choice or a warning." "And we did give them a warning," Eleanor added. 2 warnings, actually. "Plus the 48-hour delay, which they've completely ignored," Darius said, joining them at the window. "Our sensors show no increase in ships leaving the system. They're still convinced we're bluffing." Mira was the last to join them, her usual energy subdued. "How long now?" 3 hours, 17 minutes, Eleanor replied without checking her watch. "The quantum cascade will begin at the core and spread outward. From their perspective, the star will seem to dim rapidly over about 30 seconds, then simply vanish." "And what exactly will happen to anyone still in the system when that occurs?" Jack asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Eleanor took a long sip of her terrible coffee before responding. "The planets will remain in their orbits, temporarily. Without the star's gravity, they'll eventually drift, but that would take years. The immediate effect will be the loss of light and heat. Temperatures will plummet within hours. Any ships in transit without sufficient power reserves for life support will, well, they had their chance," Darius said firmly. "They could have evacuated." "Could they, though?" Mira challenged. "Do they even have enough ships to evacuate billions of people in 48 hours? Would we?" The conversation was interrupted by an alert from the bridge. They rushed back to find a priority communication coming in from Earth. Admiral Montgomery's face appeared on the main screen, his expression somehow even grimmer than usual. To Commander Holloway. "Status report. Devices are placed and activated, sir. Quantum cascade initiates in just over 3 hours." Montgomery nodded. "The Kraxori have responded to our warnings. They're threatening to attack every human colony simultaneously if we don't recall whatever weapon we've deployed." "So they believe us now?" Jack asked. "They believe we're attempting something. Whether they believe we can actually succeed is another matter." "We're past the point of no return, sir," Eleanor interjected. "The cascade has already begun at the quantum level. Even if we wanted to stop it now, we couldn't." Montgomery was silent for a moment. "Then we stay the course." I've ordered all Earth forces to high alert if this doesn't work, or if they attack anyway. It'll work, Eleanor said with absolute confidence. The final 3 hours passed in tense silence. The crew gathered on the bridge, watching the countdown displayed prominently on the main view screen. Jack found himself holding his breath as the final seconds ticked away. Cascade reaching critical threshold, Eleanor announced, her eyes fixed on her instruments. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. On the view screen, magnified to show detail, the Craxori star flickered. It dimmed rapidly, as if someone were turning down a dimmer switch, and then between one heartbeat and the next it simply wasn't there anymore. Where once had burned a G-type main sequence star, there was nothing. Not darkness, not a black hole, just absence. As if that particular piece of space had forgotten it was supposed to have a star in it. "Holy shit," Mira whispered. It actually worked. Eleanor was too busy checking readings to celebrate. Quantum displacement successful. The star has been shifted completely out of our dimensional plane. "What's happening in the system?" Jack asked, his voice hoarse. Darius expanded the sensor display. Massive communications traffic. Every ship in their fleet is powering up. They're panicking. On a secondary screen, they could see the Craxori homeworld, now visible only by the reflected light of distant stars. Already the upper atmosphere was beginning to crystallize as temperatures plummeted. "We should go," Jack said quietly. "Now, in maximum speed back to Earth." As the inconspicuous turned and accelerated away from the now starless system, Jack couldn't help but look back one last time. Where once had been light and life, there was now only the beginning of an endless night. "They should have taken us seriously," he murmured to himself. "Everyone always underestimates the monkeys until the monkeys make your sun disappear." And that, Jack concluded, addressing the assembled United Earth Government Council 6 weeks later, is how Project Silence was executed. The chamber was deathly quiet. 300 representatives from every corner of human-controlled space stared at him with expressions ranging from horror to grudging approval. "The Craxori Imperium no longer exists as a functioning civilization," he continued. Approximately 12% of their population managed to evacuate before their ships ran out of power. The survivors have been granted asylum in the Regelian Consortium, under strict supervision. "And you're sure the star is truly gone?" one councillor asked. "Not just hidden or cloaked somehow?" Eleanor, standing beside Jack at the podium, stepped forward, raised from the perspective of our universe. "Yes, the Craxori star has been removed from our dimensional plane. We could restore it, theoretically, but the calculation complexity increases exponentially with time. At this point, returning their star would require more computing power than exists in the known galaxy." Another councillor stood. "Commander Holloway, while the results cannot be denied, many of us are concerned about the precedent this sets. We've effectively demonstrated the ability to extinguish entire star systems, with the diplomatic repercussions." "The diplomatic repercussions are exactly what we intended," Jack interrupted. "Since news of what happened to the Craxoria spread, 17 different alien civilizations have reached out to establish formal diplomatic relations with Earth. 3 of them were previously hostile. Fear is not the basis for lasting peace," the councillor objected. "No," Jack agreed, "but respect is. And let's be honest, humanity had a bit of an image problem. We were seen as the new kids on the block, the easy targets. But the perception has been corrected." In the months that followed, Jack found himself promoted, decorated, and then quietly assigned to a desk job as far from public view as possible. The official story released to the general population was heavily redacted. The Craxori star had mysteriously failed, following their unprovoked attack on Epsilon Colony. A divine retribution, some called it, a cosmic karma. The truth was restricted to the highest levels of government, though rumors persisted. Humanity's reputation among the galactic community changed virtually overnight. Where once they had been seen as curious, somewhat primitive newcomers to interstellar politics, they were now approached with cautious respect. Jack sometimes found himself staring up at the night sky from his apartment balcony on Earth, thinking about the dark spot where the Kraxori star had once burned. Not a black hole, not an explosion, just absence. The perfect silence of a stellar grave. Was it worth it? Mira asked him once, months later, when their paths crossed at a military function. Jack considered the question carefully. We haven't had a single attack on a human colony since. Not even a border skirmish. So strategically speaking, yes. And personally speaking? He shrugged, uncomfortable with the weight of the question. I sleep better than I expected to. Not great, but better than I'd probably deserve. The Kraxori had a saying Jack had learned during the mission preparations. The only lasting lesson is the one that cannot be forgotten. By that standard, humanity had taught the galaxy a masterclass. The message had been received, loud and clear, by every spacefaring civilization within communication range. Mess with humans, and they won't just fight back, they'll rewrite the laws of physics to erase you from existence. They'll answer your aggression not with equal force, but with the kind of creative overkill that only a species that spent millennia perfecting new ways to destroy itself could conceive. In the end, the most terrifying thing wasn't that humanity could make a star disappear. It was that some human had thought to try it in the first place. As for Jack, whenever someone asked him about the mysterious case of the vanished Kraxori star, he would simply smile and say, sometimes the universe just gives you the silent treatment. After all, in space, no one can hear you scream, especially when your entire star system has been quantum shifted into non-existence. Talk about having the last laugh.